I stood at the edge of their driveway, steadying the weight of the cake box against my hip. The sky over Denver was pale and cold, but I had chosen my best dress, the one with soft cream sleeves and a pair of sensible heels I hadn't worn in years. In my purse was an envelope with a card and a check, my small surprise for Trevor. As I walked up the path, I rehearsed what I might say when he opened the door, how his face might light up like it did when he was a boy, and I brought cupcakes to his class. Danielle opened the door first. She didn't greet me. Her eyes flicked to the cake, then back to her phone as if I were a delivery person. "Come in," she muttered, stepping aside. The living room smelled of catered food and wine. People I didn't know were laughing in clusters. I held the cake higher, looking for Trevor. He appeared from the kitchen, his shirt crisp, a drink in his hand. For a moment, I thought he might hug me. Instead, he smiled a strange, thin smile. "Look who's here," he said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. Danielle glanced at him, then at me, her lips curling. Mom Trevor continued, "If you really want to give me a present this year." He paused, taking a sip, letting the room's chatter go quiet. "Die already. That'd be the best gift." The words hit me harder than a slap. Danielle clinked her glass to his and chuckled. Someone near the counter coughed nervously, then turned away. My fingers went numb. The cake slid from my hands and hit the hardwood floor with a soft, wet thud. Frosting spread across the boards, almond and sugar mixing with the scent of wine. Nobody moved. Not one person bent down. I bent slowly, gathering the box with trembling hands, feeling the silence press against my back. In that moment, I knew something inside me had shifted. I didn't cry on the drive home. My hands stayed steady on the wheel, my breath even. But as soon as I stepped into my kitchen, I leaned against the counter and stared at the cake box I'd rescued. Crushed, ruined, like something else I couldn't name yet. I set it aside and walked to the hallway closet. Behind the winter coats, beneath a stack of old tax files, was a metal lockbox. I brought it to the table, entered the combination without needing to look, and lifted the lid. Inside, rows of neatly labeled folders, envelopes, rubber-banded receipts. I slid one out, 2008. House down payment, and laid it flat. $47,000 wired from my retirement account to Trevor's closing escrow. He was so grateful that day. Called me a saint. I remember feeling proud. Needed. Next folder, 2014, boutique loan, D. Rivas, $25,000. Danielle wanted her own store. Said it would be self-sustaining in 6 months. It closed in 8. They never repaid a dime. I flipped through them in silence. 2016, private school tuition, Evan plus Maddie, 2020, car lease. Name M. Rivas, 2022. Health insurance annual premium. Each document had its own story, a conversation, a promise. But none of them came with the respect that should have followed. They always called it help. Like I was the helper. Temporary, replaceable, quiet. The total when I added it up again was $245,700. I used to update it every year just to keep track. Not for power, just so I wouldn't forget how much I'd been part of their lives. I ran my fingers over the last page. It had coffee stains and a corner torn from when I once dropped it in the garden. But the numbers were clear. The numbers never lied. They had erased me in words, but I had been written into every part of their foundation. I closed the box, gently pressed my hand on top of it, and walked to the window. The porch light flickered. I hadn't turned it off in years. But tonight, I did. And then I opened my laptop. 2 years ago, I turned 65. I woke up before sunrise like I always do, and sat at the kitchen table listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The coffee pot gurgled as it brewed. I didn't expect a party. I didn't need gifts. But I thought maybe, just maybe, Trevor would call, or one of the kids would send a little voice message, even if prompted by Danielle. I waited until noon. Nothing. I spent the morning watering the plants along the back fence. The tomatoes were just starting to fruit, and the hydrangeas had pushed out their first cautious blooms. I poured my coffee into a thermos and sat outside with a sweater draped across my shoulders, pretending I wasn't waiting for the phone to buzz. That afternoon, I checked my social media just habit. That's when I saw it. Danielle had posted an album titled Family Weekend Escape Photos of the kids burying Trevor in sand. Danielle sipping cocktails in a big, floppy hat. Even Trevor grinning over a bonfire with marshmallows in his hand. The date stamp was yesterday. They'd gone away for the weekend. My birthday weekend. There had been no emergency, no excuse. They just didn't want me there. I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands felt cold even though it was June. I clicked on Trevor's profile, hovered over the friends button. Then I clicked unfriend. Did the same for Danielle. Closed the laptop. They never noticed. That evening, I took out a cake mix from the pantry. Yellow cake, the kind Trevor liked when he was little. I added extra eggs to make it richer, just like I used to. When it cooled, I spread chocolate frosting over the top and added some chopped walnuts. I didn't light candles. I sat alone at the table, cut myself a slice, and ate it slowly. The house was quiet, except for the ticking clock on the wall. I told myself it was just a day. But deep down, something shifted, then a door closing. And now, 2 years later, another one was about to open. It's strange what the mind hides to keep you from breaking. All those little moments I once excused now return in full color, louder than they were the first time. They don't whisper anymore, they scream. Trevor only ever called when something needed fixing. A payment was late. The furnace broke. Danielle's boutique had a slow month. Always some urgent reason to dip into what they called Mom's emergency fund. But the emergencies were always theirs. Never mine. And when I did call just to talk, he'd answer with a distracted voice, always on speaker, always rushed. I learned to keep it short. I told myself he was busy. A family man. A businessman. I swallowed that lie like medicine. I remember hearing Danielle refer to me as that woman once. It was on a call I wasn't supposed to overhear. Trevor had accidentally dialed me, and I heard her in the background. Don't tell that woman about our plans. She'll just ask questions. Not your mom. Not even Marlene. Just that woman. As if I were a burden clinging to their life. The children Evan and Maddie couldn't tell you when my birthday was if you offered them candy. I tried to keep up. I sent books, puzzles, video messages. They'd thank me once, maybe. Sometimes not at all. Last Thanksgiving, Danielle texted me 3 days before. Please don't bring your weird side dishes this year. Just send money so we can cater properly. I remember staring at the screen, rereading it. I'd been making the same green bean casserole since Trevor was 10. Suddenly, it was weird. Unwelcome. And those quilts I stitched for the kids, every square a memory they were shoved in a clear bin in the garage. I saw them once when I came by unannounced. The lid was cracked. Dust clung to the fabric. All of it was there the whole time. I just didn't want to see it. But now, with every detail laid bare, I was seeing it all. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. For years, I had convinced myself the account was for them. It started small, $50 here, $100 there, whenever I could spare it from my paycheck, or later from my pension. 7 years of deposits, careful and regular, built into something solid. A cushion, I told myself. For family safety, for hurricanes, layoffs, medical bills, the unthinkable. I even gave it a name in my online banking hope fund. Trevor and Danielle always spoke of it as if it were theirs. We've got that account if anything goes wrong, Trevor would say, and Danielle would nod, already planning which bill she could pay with it. I never corrected them. It was easier to let them believe, easier to feel useful. But sitting at my kitchen table now, the lockbox closed beside me, I saw the truth. The account wasn't a lifeline for them. It was a lifeline for me. It was the one thread of control I had left. I opened my laptop. The glow of the screen lit the papers scattered across the table. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for only a moment before muscle memory took over. Username, password, security code sent to my phone. There it was. Hope Fund. Balance 78 for $12.16. I clicked transfer. Typed in the routing number of my private account, the one no one but my tax preparer knew existed. Confirmed. Another prompt appeared. Are you sure? Yes. Submit. The screen blinked, then refreshed. Balance 0.0. I exhaled a sound somewhere between relief and grief. It felt like sliding a bolt across a door that had been open too long. Outside, a car drove by, headlights sweeping across the kitchen window. I closed the laptop and placed my hand flat on the lid as if sealing something inside. For the first time in years, I wasn't just a bystander to my own generosity. I was its keeper. And this was only the first step. I reached for the phone and scrolled to the contact I hadn't dialed in years, my lawyer. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice picked up. Halvorsen and Finch, he said, crisp as ever. Martin, I replied. It's Marlene Rivas. A pause, then warmth. Marlene, it's been a while. We exchanged a few pleasantries. He asked about my health. I asked about his garden. Then I got to the point. I need to confirm something. Trevor's house, the one on Sycamore Ridge. I'm still legally listed as a co-owner, correct? He didn't even need to check. Yes. You're on the deed. You funded the down payment and the paperwork was notarized. We filed it jointly in 2008. Nothing's been changed. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Good. I'd like to begin the process of selling my share. Another pause. Are you sure? I've never been more sure. He didn't question it further, just promised to send over the paperwork within the hour and asked where to forward the updated documents. I gave him my personal P.O. box, not the house address, not anymore. When we hung up, I moved to the hallway cabinet where I kept a small notepad with all my autopay accounts written by hand. I started with the school. Logged in, canceled the monthly tuition transfer. Next, Danielle's business credit card, the one she linked to my bank with the promise she'd pay it off herself. Canceled. Each cancellation felt like trimming a thread from my skin one by one. No pain, just release. By the time I closed my banking app, the kitchen was silent again. Not hollow clean. I wiped my hands and scrolled through the names in my phone until I found it. Margot, Oregon. We hadn't spoken in months, but when she picked up and heard my voice, she gasped. Marlene, to what do I owe the surprise? I smiled. Is your guest room still open? She laughed. It always is. Come whenever you're ready. I looked around the house one last time. My keys were still in the bowl, but my heart was already packed. The neighborhood was still damp with early morning sprinklers when I parked a block away from Trevor's house. I sat for a moment with the engine off, watching sunlight crawl over the roofline. Their cars were gone, just as I had planned. A silence hung over the street, broken only by a dog barking somewhere down the cul-de-sac. I stepped out, clutching the manila envelope against my chest. It was heavier than it should have been, thick with papers, memories, and something like finality. My shoes barely made a sound on the walkway. The spare key they'd given me years ago still worked. The lock turned easily, as if unaware that everything behind it had changed. Inside the house smelled of coffee grounds and perfume. I paused in the hallway, noticing the framed photos of vacations I had paid for, but never attended. Danielle's boutique ad hung above the console table like a trophy. In the kitchen, the marble counters gleamed under the recessed lights. I set the envelope down in the center of the table where they usually spread out their bills. My fingers lingered on the flap before I opened it one last time, checking its contents. Photocopies of every wire transfer, each page marked with dates and amounts. The legal notice terminating my share of the house, notarized and signed. And on top, my letter. You wished me gone, so now I am. All this time I gave, and still it wasn't enough. I closed the envelope and pressed it flat, sliding it to the exact center of the table. A gust of air from the open window fluttered the edges like a quiet exhale. I walked back through the house without touching anything else. Outside, the sun had risen higher, lighting the street in a pale gold that felt almost clean. As I locked the door behind me, the weight on my chest shifted, not gone yet, but moving. The letter was no longer mine to carry. By the time I reached my car, my mind was already on the road north and the bags waiting in my hallway closet. They must have come home around 4. I could already imagine their voices. Trevor's lazy laugh, Danielle's heels clicking against the hardwood. They wouldn't have noticed the envelope right away. They'd drop their keys, grab a drink, maybe argue briefly about dinner. But eventually, Trevor would glance at the kitchen table and spot it. I knew the moment he opened it. My phone buzzed nonstop for 3 minutes straight. Then silence. Then Danielle's number. Then Trevor again. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Somewhere between Denver and Eugene, I let myself picture their faces. Trevor flipping through the wire transfers page after page, realizing every dollar had come from me. Every corner of their life traced back to my sacrifices. And now that lifeline was gone. Then the legal letter. The house wasn't fully theirs. Not yet. And my share was being sold. If they couldn't refinance, they'd have to move. Danielle would have gone straight to her laptop, only to see her boutique's card had been declined. The bank called in the penalties on the unpaid balance. Her reaction? I could only imagine it involved breaking something. And the kids. Evan and Maddie's school would have emailed that afternoon. We regret to inform you. Another call buzzed through. Blocked. Then again from a new number. Persistent. I let it go to voicemail. After the beep, silence. Then Trevor's voice, tight, angry. Not quite in control. Mom, what are you doing? You can't just cut us off. This isn't how family works. At the end of the message, I heard Danielle in the background. She'll come crawling back. Watch. As the plane touched down and the wheels hummed against the runway, I powered off the phone and slid it into my bag. Outside, Margot was waiting by the arrivals gate, waving with both hands. I woke to the sound of birds tapping at the window and the soft clink of a spoon in a ceramic mug. The Oregon air felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in years. Cool, damp, and green. From the kitchen, Margot's voice floated down the hall. Chapter 4. She read aloud. She left no goodbye. Just pages of numbers, proof of what love cost her. I smiled into my pillow. Margot had been working on a novel for over a decade, but this one was new. She said she didn't mean to write about me. That it just came out. I pulled on a sweater and wandered out, my feet bare on the tile. She handed me a warm mug of coffee, strong, dark, just the way I liked it. Neither of us said anything for a while. We didn't need to. Later that morning, she tossed me her car keys and said, "Let's do something unnecessary." We drove into town, the kind of sleepy little place where everyone waves at red lights. At a corner bakery with hand-painted signs, we picked out cupcakes. Lemon raspberry, something with cinnamon, and I chose one with a swirl of white chocolate frosting. I didn't tell the cashier it was my birthday. Didn't expect a song or a candle or even a happy birthday. That wasn't the point anymore. Back at Margot's, I placed the cupcake on a saucer and found a small candle in the junk drawer. I lit it myself and sat by the window as the flame danced against the glass. No one was watching. No one had to be. I closed my eyes, made a wish, and blew it out in a single breath. The frosting was too sweet, the cake a little dry, but it was mine, every bite of it. Later that afternoon, I helped Margot sort through boxes in her garage, laughing at old photos and broken lamps. There was no noise from Denver, no guilt in my chest, just quiet, and a place to begin again. That night, I opened my laptop and started writing. Weeks passed before Trevor received the final letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with no return address, but he would have known my handwriting anywhere. Inside, a single page. No receipts this time. No legal terms. Just words he would have to read on his own. You gave me the gift of truth. You told me what I meant to you. I listened. I heard every word. So now I'm giving something back. Freedom. From me. From the woman you called dirty or too much or not enough. You don't have to perform gratitude anymore. You are released. And so am I. Danielle tried to stir the waters. She called every number she had threatened lawsuits claimed emotional distress. But the papers were airtight, filed, verified, final. There were no loopholes, no magic strings left to pull. The house sold fast. A young couple bought it. I heard they're expecting their first baby in the spring. I wished them nothing but warmth, the proceeds. They didn't go back to me. I had enough. Instead, I opened a scholarship fund in my hometown's community college. Named it after my mother, Letty Mae Hollis, the woman who taught me how to stretch $1 and keep a spine. It would fund women over 40 returning to school. Women starting over. Women like me. Trevor never reached out again. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, the line was gone. But sometimes I picture him reading that letter alone in the kitchen, where I once laid out birthday candles and grocery bags and homemade quilts. I wonder if he reread the part that said, "Love without respect isn't love, it's debt." That was the last thing I gave him. A gift he'd never return. That evening, I stood on the back porch of Margot's house watching the trees sway under a gray sky. I pulled my cardigan tighter and let the wind carry what it wanted. And then I went inside because the kettle was whistling.